All right, Bills Mafia, we've got two genuinely massive stories to break down today. First, we're talking about several familiar faces walking into training camp under real pressure, with some of them potentially fighting just to make the final roster. Then, we're digging into a story that could have a real significant impact on this defense if things break the right way over the next few weeks. Both of these deserve real attention, because they could end up shaping exactly what this roster looks like when week one finally arrives. Let's get into the first story, because training camp is only a few weeks away, and for most teams around the league, this time of year is simply about fine-tuning the roster. But for Buffalo, this is considerably more than that. This is a genuine championship caliber roster built by this front office with one singular goal in mind: winning the Super Bowl. That also means nobody gets a free pass anymore. It doesn't matter where you were drafted. It doesn't matter what you've accomplished in previous seasons. If you want one of those 53 roster spots, you're going to have to earn it outright. The player facing the biggest spotlight of the entire training camp has to be Keon Coleman. This is a genuinely massive second season for him. We all saw real flashes during his rookie year, moments that made it obvious exactly why this front office believed in his talent in the first place. His size, athleticism, and ability to make difficult, contested catches gave this fan base plenty of reason for real excitement. But if we're being completely fair, the overall production simply wasn't consistent enough. This front office drafted him hoping he'd eventually become one of Josh Allen's most dependable weapons, and that hasn't fully materialized just yet. The potential is genuinely still there, but this season is entirely about turning that potential into consistent weekly production, and the competition around him isn't getting any easier. DJ Moore is already firmly locked into a starting role, while Khalil Shakir has continued earning real trust from Josh Allen through sheer consistency and reliability. That leaves Coleman fighting to hold on to the number 3 receiver spot, with a veteran also pushing for real playing time, along with a handful of younger receivers who know a strong training camp could completely change the trajectory of their careers. If he puts together a genuinely impressive camp, this entire conversation disappears. But if he struggles again through practices and preseason games, this front office could meaningfully reduce his offensive role and might even accelerate the search for another veteran receiver addition before week one if they feel more dependable production is needed. Another name worth watching closely is Mecole Hardman. He brings real experience, genuine playoff pedigree, and real value as a return specialist, but none of that guarantees him a roster spot. This coaching staff wants genuine versatility from every single backup receiver, players who can contribute meaningfully on offense while also helping out on special teams whenever their number gets called. If younger receivers on this roster prove they can provide that same special teams value while offering considerably more offensive upside, his spot on this roster could become genuinely difficult to justify. Training camp may ultimately determine whether he sticks around in Buffalo or becomes one of those surprising late preseason cuts nobody saw coming. Then there's Trent Sherfield, who finds himself in a remarkably similar situation. He's earned real respect throughout his career as one of the league's more dependable special teams contributors, and coaches genuinely love having players they can trust in those specific situations, with real added value as a veteran locker room presence too. But once again, this front office has invested real resources in younger talent capable of filling those exact same roles. Experience matters, but genuine upside matters just as much. If this coaching staff believes a younger player can match his special teams production while offering considerably more long-term potential, this could easily be the year they decide to get younger at that specific depth spot. Another player facing one of the most significant competitions of his entire career is Damar Hamlin. First and foremost, what he's overcome will always stand as one of the most remarkable comeback stories in the history of this league, and that never changes regardless of what happens on the field. But once the actual football starts, This becomes purely about competition again. This coaching staff made real significant changes to the safety room this offseason, creating considerably more competition for both starting jobs and depth chart spots. He now has to prove he genuinely deserves meaningful defensive snaps rather than simply serving as pure organizational depth. If he performs well throughout camp and the preseason, he can absolutely carve out a real important role in this defense. But if other safeties on this roster separate themselves, he'll face a genuinely uphill battle to remain part of this defense's long-term plans. The pressure is every bit as real for linebacker Dorian Williams. There's no question he has real athletic ability. We've seen the speed, the physical tools, and genuine flashes suggesting there's another level still waiting to be unlocked. But this is no longer purely about raw potential. This coaching staff needs players they can trust on a weekly basis. He has to prove he can consistently diagnose plays correctly, stay disciplined against the run, and remain dependable in coverage. A strong preseason could lock him firmly into an important role within this linebacker rotation, but continued inconsistency gives this front office every reason to lean on other veteran options instead. And then there's what might genuinely be the most fascinating overall competition on this entire roster, the defensive line. This battle could get genuinely fierce, with young developing talent competing directly against established rotational veterans for a limited number of remaining roster spots. Every single practice rep, every preseason series, and every opportunity to impress this coaching staff could end up influencing exactly who makes the final roster. Given how much genuine depth this front office has built up front, don't be shocked if one or even multiple recognizable names become surprise cuts before the regular season begins. And honestly, that's really the biggest overall takeaway from this entire story. This isn't a rebuilding roster anymore. This is a team entering the season fully expecting to compete for a championship starting day one. Developmental projects are expected to contribute immediately. Established veterans can't lean on reputation alone anymore. Every single position features real competition, and every player on this roster has something genuine to prove. Now let's shift to the second major story, because this one is absolutely going to get this fan base talking. One of the more notable names still sitting on the free agent market right now is a player this fan base knows extremely well, Joey Bosa. When Buffalo originally moved on from him earlier this offseason, most people around the league assumed another team would scoop him up fairly quickly. After all, we're talking about a multiple-time Pro Bowler with years of proven experience getting after opposing quarterbacks. But here we are, right on the doorstep of training camp, and he remains unsigned, which has genuinely started raising real eyebrows around the league. And now, according to league speculation surrounding this front office's off-season planning, there's real internal discussion about whether bringing him back on a genuinely team-friendly contract could strengthen this pass-rushing rotation for another real championship push. To be clear, nothing here is considered imminent. There's no deal close to happening, and there's been no report suggesting an agreement is near. Instead, this front office appears to simply be doing exactly what smart organizations do: evaluating every realistic option before committing to a final decision. Brandon Beane clearly knows this roster is talented enough to compete for a title, but he also understands just how much genuine depth can matter over the course of a long, grueling NFL season. Right now, Buffalo seems fully comfortable heading into training camp with its current defensive line as constructed, but that doesn't mean the door is permanently closed. The real expectation is that this front office watches very closely during the early weeks of camp before ultimately deciding whether another veteran addition becomes necessary. If the defensive front doesn't perform quite the way this coaching staff expects, or if injuries start becoming a genuine problem, that's exactly when things could get interesting fast. The belief is that Buffalo could reach out and invite him in for a formal meeting during training camp, specifically to discuss the realistic possibility of a return. Notice that specific word, meeting. Not a contract, not a guaranteed signing. Simply bringing both sides together to gauge whether another partnership genuinely makes sense. That measured approach genuinely makes a lot of sense. Why rush into a major decision today when you can first fully evaluate the players already on your own roster? Training camp is exactly where those specific questions get answered, revealing whether your younger pass rushers are truly ready for expanded roles, whether your existing depth is genuinely good enough, and whether real outside help is actually necessary before week 1 arrives. And if the answer ends up being yes, he immediately becomes one of the more logical options realistically available, even accounting for real durability concerns that have followed him over recent seasons. There's no denying what he's still capable of when fully healthy. Opposing quarterbacks still have to account for him. Offensive coordinators still respect his ability to consistently pressure the pocket, and proven veteran pass rushers with real playoff experience simply don't grow on trees. There's another layer worth considering here too. He already knows this organization intimately. He understands the culture and exactly what's expected inside that building. He wouldn't be walking into some completely unfamiliar situation requiring everything to start entirely from scratch, and that built-in familiarity could make any potential transition considerably smoother than bringing in a completely unfamiliar veteran late in the preseason. When you're trying to maximize every possible advantage during a genuine championship window, those small edges genuinely matter. What's also genuinely surprising here is just how quiet his overall market has remained. Plenty of people around the league expected multiple teams to show real, strong interest once the initial wave of free agency wrapped up. Instead, that simply hasn't happened, with plenty of organizations apparently choosing to give their own younger edge rushers every opportunity throughout camp before committing additional cap space to a veteran addition. Ironically, that ongoing waiting game could actually work directly in Buffalo's favor. If he remains available while this front office continues evaluating its own roster, there's a real chance Bean ends up negotiating a considerably more affordable short-term deal than would have been realistically possible earlier in the offseason cycle, providing genuine insurance along this defensive line without taking on any significant financial risk. For now, though, there's no real sense of urgency here. This front office appears genuinely confident in the group heading into camp. They're not forcing a move out of panic. They're simply keeping an experienced, proven option available in case circumstances shift over the coming weeks. If the defensive line performs well throughout camp, maybe nothing happens here at all. But if the pass rush struggles, or if injuries start piling up, don't be surprised if his phone starts ringing. And if mutual interest genuinely remains on both sides, that reported training camp meeting could become the very first step toward officially bringing him back to Buffalo for another run. So there you have it, Bills Mafia, a roster where genuinely nobody's spot feels fully guaranteed anymore, and a front office quietly keeping its options open on a proven veteran pass rusher who knows this organization inside and out. Together, both stories say a lot about exactly where this franchise stands right now, fully expecting to win immediately and unwilling to settle for anything less. So let us know down in the comments, which player do you believe is under the most pressure heading into training camp? And if Joey Bosa is still available in a few weeks, would you bring him back on a team-friendly deal? Or would you rather fully trust the young pass rushers already on this roster? We want to hear it all. If you enjoyed today's update, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss a single update heading into training camp. Go Bills! We'll see you in the next one.